the inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. I'm Dan Hurley. Some Newsmakers interviews make me smile more than others. I started out as a teacher at LaSalle High School 48 years ago. When a student succeeds, especially one that you like, you cannot be anything but proud. Plus, if you have any doubt how much I trust this former student, he's been my dentist since 1975 and has to work hard to make sure I have all of my teeth. I'm joined this morning by Dr. Joseph Crowley, who was just elected the next president of the American Dental Association. He will serve as president-elect from now until October 2017, when he assumes the presidency for a year. Given the signals put out by another president-elect, Donald Trump, about the intentions regarding the Affordable Care Act, Dr. Crowley finds himself in a critical position of influence. Joe, welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you, Dan. I appreciate the opportunity.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
And since you got elected this, I'm going to get rid of that incomplete on your record, your high school record, and that paper that you still owe me. So anyway, tell me a little bit about the campaign that you were involved in, because it was structured very differently than the presidential campaign that we've just been through.
Yeah, interestingly enough, we do have a process, and it's progressive as you move forward. It takes more time as you go. But candidates come forward, we sit together and write the rules of the campaign. One of those rules is that we will travel everywhere. If there's an invitation, we all have to be able to be there, so that we're able to be in that format and make our presentations together, and then let our member dentists who have the votes have the opportunity to weigh how they choose to go. And luckily for me, this time around, it turned out I won.
So what's the relationship of after traveling together, and how many months did that go on?
Boy, the process probably took 18 months, the last 9 of which we were traveling quite a bit, really very much.
And how did you end up, what's your relationship with the two people who didn't end up being president-elect?
You know, I made a comment when my announcement was made that they gave me the microphone. I made a comment that I started this race with 2 friends. I ended the race with 2 very, very good friends. We traveled together, we learned a lot about each other. We espoused the same issues, so it's personality issues and things, but we just had a tremendous campaign. Our organization gave us kudos on maybe one of the finest run campaigns that they've ever had.
Oh, great. Very different outcome, and allows the organization to go forward.
Very much so.
In a positive sort of way. How has dental care been included, impacted by the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, over the last 6-7 years?
One of the things that was very critical in the Affordable Care Act was the inclusion of pediatric dental care as an essential health benefit. We have the conversation on adult care not being included as an essential benefit, but the reality is, because of the inclusion of pediatric dental care, many more children in our country today are having access. In fact, the numbers we're seeing are going up. There's been better access to children dental care than there ever has been in this country, and that was a great outcome of the Affordable Care Act.
And is that something that you could see in your practice itself?
Not my particular practice, but in the safety net system we have in America, the amount of inclusion of people who weren't going to care for whatever reason, the outcome has been more people had access through the safety net programs that are, and in Cincinnati, Ohio, it's a very strong program. And so the ability to do that was wonderful. In private practices like my own, some were affected a little bit, but just the overall oral health literacy rose a lot. So people who wouldn't go to care, even if they weren't in that safety net access thing, became much more aware of dental care and the value of pediatric dental care.
President-elect Trump is talking about repealing, and the Republican Party is talking about repealing the Affordable Care Act and replacing it with something. If a repeal takes place, what is it that your organization, the American Dental Association, would like to see maintained going forward? What would be your position in terms of if there's a repeal?
You know, my profession is just as nervous as anyone else on where this is going. If a repeal occurs, we want what replacement is there to be rapid. There are some very good things in there that are included with the safety net issues. The expansion of Medicaid has been powerful. Access to care issues, health awareness has been powerful. People being able to get care. Numbers have gone up on people who have access to health care. We think that's wonderful. Moving forward, oral health has always been a little bit of a stepchild, and we would like to see whatever comes forward to be more directive at including oral health care for adults and children in any process that comes forward from this day forward.
Do you have a voice inside of Congress? Any dentist, any who are representatives or senators? We just, with this past election, our 4th dentist has been elected to Congress. So we now have 4 dentists, all were practicing dentists, know my profession very well, and they sit at the table. They become the knowledge base for other congressmen who don't know anything about healthcare or dentistry especially. So they have had a major impact on helping us bring issues forward that are important to oral health and my dentist, my member dentist. Do you happen to know any of those 4?
Those 4, I know all 4 of the member dentists very, very well. And then I also have another compatriot, a friend, somebody you know very well, and Congressman Steve Shabbat, a high school classmate of mine, and now as a congressman has been a great ear for issues as I come forward. And now Steve holds the chairmanship of the Small Business Committee, which, as you know, at this day, this current point, most dentists in America are small businessmen. Some of us, most of us, employing 10 or less people. So issues that affect small business in America affect the profession of dentistry dramatically.
And that's even more so than, say, with doctors in general, medical doctors, where groups have been formed, hospital associations have taken over a lot of the practices and put everybody together. There's many more of you out there as these small business people.
Yeah, probably at this point in time, 65 to 70% of the member dentists are still in private practice situations, which is a small business situation. Medicine has taken a little different course. A lot of those things, those changes, some have been very positive, some have been a little bit, what are we doing with it? Dentistry keeps a keen eye on that. As things change, should our profession move forward into a bigger control group? And in reality, we hope that dentistry holds its own as being able to be a small business operation. There's other delivery systems that will develop with it, but we still want to maintain the core of how oral health care is delivered in America.
Looking at that from a small business perspective, what is it that you would like to see? What would help maybe all small businesses, but you could speak to, as a small business person from the oral health area, what would you like to see? Well,
and whatever this new health care situation is going to be, there are some oppressive taxations that are in it now we'd love to see go away. Taxes on medical devices and things that just raise the cost of doing business for a small businessman, which then means the final end user costs go up. That's the same thing in dentistry. There are other things that I think would be very valuable to keep and expand. The health savings accounts, they've got reduced a little bit in ADA or in the ACA, but in reality, if health savings accounts allow people to put money away in a very tax incentivized ways, it'll help them as they move forward, being able to save that money and use it for health crises come up. And dentistry is one of those places where the population doesn't always think about their oral health care, and then if a tough situation comes up, paying for it gets very difficult. And that's part of the problem with dentistry. Dental health is really a very preventable disease, but the reality is that's not always there. So a quick issue that comes up, maybe a fractured tooth or something, is costly on the front side. And having preparation for that and some tax incentives for that could help a lot. Tax incentives for small businesses to purchase health care becomes very, very important. And again, I'll reiterate, dentistry we have a lot of small businessmen out there in our community.
When you were, early on, you were talking about some taxes on equipment, or I'm not sure what the term was you used, but I know in your practice, you've brought in a lot of digital equipment over the last 5 years or so. So the old impressions are gone. I'm very happy for that, by the way. Are those the sorts of things that you're talking about?
Yes. Technology is very critical to delivering future healthcare, and dentistry's no exception there. In fact, our technology has really moved forward. When you're taxed as you purchase a device, again, that tax goes to the manufacturer, but in reality is passed on to the purchaser, and then is passed on to the end user. So any tax like that gets involved in a healthcare delivery system just raises the cost of care. So for us, things like that are critically important. So yes, there are taxes on certain devices, and that expansion of that would be not in the best interest, I think, of dentistry or any small business for that matter.
What about the whole area of regulation? President-elect Trump has been very clear about wanting to reduce regulations. Is that something that dentists face?
My profession has been very good at advocating for things that affect what we do. So there's environmental issues, we sit at the table. There are regulations on safety inside practices. We want safe best practices for everything. Getting rid of some of the HIPAA laws that have created. We sit at the table and want to make sure they're constructive, not burdensome, and yet do the safety issues that we want to have. So we sit at the table very much in those issues.
What will be your role? You're going to be president-elect for a long period of time and then president for a year. So it's really a 2-year commitment. What are you going to be doing you're a small business person,
I am.
You're, how are you going to do that and this, and what will be your role in all the sorts of things that we've just been talking about?
In my own personal situation, I've been practicing dentistry for 40 years, as you well know.
Right.
So that transition to my next phase, yeah, I feel a kid. So my mind still feels young. So transitioning that business was probably a good thing to start doing anyway. I have dentists that surround me. I have a young man that's just outstanding that's helped me through this thing, and he will be a valuable asset to my practice and my community. So I have that part of it pretty comfortably settled. Moving forward, I will travel across the country with my president. We are the voice of dentistry. If there's organizations, if there's member dentists, anybody who wants to hear something about where oral health care should be in America, I'll have the role of being able to go out and help my president take that to the hinterlands.
So you'll be on the road a lot.
Very much so.
In Washington? Would you expect at some point, if all of this health care becomes front and center, that you would be asked to testify? Dan, that's interesting, because this past Tuesday I went to Washington and I sat in a convened session with the Commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration. Got to sit at the table with other healthcare providers. It was exciting, it was enjoyable, and I got to put a message out to the Food and Drug Administration on where they can help us work with them to make our communities better. So it should be an interesting 2 years.
I love it.
And it relates back to all that government and politics that we study.
You know that well, don't
That's
you?
Very good. So, Joe, congratulations, good luck, and let's stay in touch as this whole thing rolls out.
Dan, thank you very, very much. I appreciate it.
Very good. Stay tuned. After the break, a problem has developed that has centuries in the making. Building Cincinnati, it's 15 million years old, has hillsides have slipped and changed the agenda at City Hall once again. No metropolitan region in the eastern United States has more problems with landslides than Cincinnati, which cause expensive damage for homeowners and very costly remediation efforts for the government. The most dramatic example is the 1,500-foot long, $44.5 million retaining wall holding up the western edge of Mount Adams. Welcome back. Last Monday, a group of citizens living along several blocks of Riverside Drive in the East End of Cincinnati asked the Neighborhood Committee of Cincinnati City Council to help determine what is going on with the hillside below Mount Adams and Walnut Hills that is adversely impacting their homes. On Tuesday, Local 12 reporter Joe Webb went out to the area to see for himself.
If you build on a hill, gravity eventually pulls or pushes you down. So, seeing some creep in a 140-year-old home on Riverside Drive or in the foundation of a 125-year-old tavern is no surprise. When you see it in modern construction, not even 20 years old, it raises questions. Property owners in the 2,000 and 2,100 blocks of Riverside Drive came to City Hall yesterday looking for help to keep their houses from sliding further down the hill.
The ask is that we provide some assistance in providing monitors that would allow us to figure out how much slippage is taking place and perhaps figure out what the cause is. Unless we know the cause, I don't know how we can solve the problem.
There are some serious problems. 2174, 2178, and 2182 Riverside have significant damage. Some you can see from the outside. Major repairs are underway. It should come as no surprise. A geotechnical study commissioned by the city in 1998 said 8 to 12 inches of slippage should be expected here over the life of the property. It also said 1 to 2 story structures were preferred, not the 3 to 4 story buildings that were ultimately built.
So there may be some decisions may have been made by some builders that shouldn't have been made.
The slipping hillside is also damaging public property, including sewer lines and sidewalks. This sidewalk on the south side of Riverside Drive was just replaced earlier in the year, in the summer. You can see it's already starting to crack. Property owners are working with City Hall to help pay for the inclinometers that will measure the slippage. But their real battle may be with the forces of nature. Defeating gravity will not come cheap. In the East End, Joe Webb, Local 12 News.
To discuss what the homeowners are asking the city to do, I am joined by Vice Mayor David Mann, who heads up the Neighborhood Committee on City Council, and Louis Seiler, who lives in the affected area. Mr. Seiler is an attorney and a member of the East End Community Council in charge of the committee that's been set up to oversee this problem. Welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you.
Lou, talk a little bit. You're a homeowner. How serious you think this problem really is?
I think it's a very serious problem. I think that we have an issue that runs all the way from the Rookwood Underpass out to Collins Avenue, which is an area of about half a mile. We're seeing effects on public infrastructure, as you saw in the segment earlier, sidewalks. There have been areas of the street that have been affected, obviously. We're concerned about the sewers. We've seen sewer line issues as well. There are water lines, there are gas lines in the area. Mm-hmm. That's not to mention damage to buildings, which include damage to the new buildings and damage to buildings that have been as old as 125 years. It's a community-wide problem.
Is this something that, I don't know how long ago you moved into the house that you're in at the moment, I do believe that you live along this strip, right?
We do.
Were you alerted to this as an issue? Were you aware of this?
No, we've been there since 1979.
Okay.
And there were no problems until about 2 years ago. So from 1979 till about 2014, we did not experience anything.
So something has begun to happen relatively recently.
Yes.
David, this isn't the only place in the city that has these sorts of problems. A few years ago, Mount Auburn, there was a serious problem with the need to build a retaining wall. What's the city's approach to this?
Well, we want to try to help, and it was very helpful for Lou and others to come to the committee and document the problem. And as I said earlier, what they are asking us to do is provide some support for the cost, which is significant of the I can't pronounce it, but the devices that are used to measure the slippage. How much, how fast, and hopefully the cause. Because without understanding the cause, we can't solve the problem. I hope we can find a way to help the community cover that cost so we can provide basic information that will allow each property owner to decide what he or she needs to do.
What department of the city would be, I don't think you would probably have the expertise already inside the city administration, but probably contract out to get this done, but who would even oversee this?
The reports that we've had so far come from the Department of Transportation Engineering, Michael Moore, and they're good detailed reports. We've been following some problems for several years. Some of this occurred earlier when some new work was being done on Columbia Parkway, and ODOT, Ohio Department of Transportation, developed a database with these devices, and we need to bring that forward and see if we can develop some new information, because obviously, as Lou is indicating, something is happening now. Why the changes?
So Columbia Parkway, in effect, is up the hill above where you are.
And below that is a railroad right-of-way that has traffic on it approximately once a day. And then you get down to the houses, and then you get to Riverside.
That's been there a long time.
It has, but maybe the patterns of usage are different than they were, because for a time there wasn't much traffic on there, and recently there is some traffic.
So in Joe Webb's piece, there were people, individual homeowners, who are doing some work, trying to do some things, but facing that hill, there's a limit to what you can really do as a single homeowner. This seems to me it's the sort of thing that's going to have to be dealt with on a community-wide basis. Is that right?
I would agree with you, and that's why we've contacted the city and went to the Neighborhoods Committee, because we feel that it really is a problem that is beyond individual homeowners, and we are hoping that the city will partner with us and help us to find a solution. That is exactly how we would look at this. This is it's a matter of the community, and we think that the city is a good place to start as a partner.
David, you pointed out in that piece that there were reports in the past that indicated this could be a problem. An organization like the Hillside Trust, of course, has talked about Cincinnati's hillsides, which were shaped over centuries by geology, that this is just a problem in our area. Was there a decision by the city on zoning that maybe should not have been made here? That everybody wanted some new houses in that new development in that area, but maybe it was unwise?
Not that I'm aware of. The city doesn't own these properties and never has in recent times. In the late 90s, there was the possibility of having City-Rama in this area. And because of these concerns, the city decided it wasn't a very good location and we wouldn't support it. Then, in connection with some private development proposals, our people advised that, as Joe indicated, that any structures be limited to a couple stories, and that information be passed along at least in the first sale of the properties. Exactly what happened after that between private builders and private purchasers, I don't know. So there may be a difference between buildings that were built since '99 and assignment of responsibility, and buildings such as the one that Lou lives in, which are, yours is what,
125 years old.
25 years old.
Yeah, so you don't know who the developer for that was.
And I blame them.
But your problems are recently, as you said, the last 2 years.
That is absolutely correct. We see bowed walls, we see cracks in our plaster. I could go on about this, but there's obvious damage.
And you've lived there since...
We've had the house since 1979.
So when the new development that started to take place, and actually it's taken place on both sides of the street. I mean, there's other issues on the other side of the street, maybe with flooding, that people have raised. But were you concerned when that new development started to occur, or was your reaction, wow, glad to see new neighbors and new development in this area?
The reaction was glad to see new neighbors and new development. We had not had any problems with our building. And not only that, we would assume that there had been adequate and appropriate geotechnical information obtained, and that appropriate zoning and restrictions were in place. So we would have no reason to worry about new construction. We were just glad to see it.
Go ahead, were you about to say?
No.
From what I have learned about this, the neighbors are really trying to work with the city and not. You want a cooperative relationship here. This is not a confrontational situation. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. We think that our interests are the same as the city's interests, which are to see this being continue to be the thriving and really exciting neighborhood that it is.
And this was the spirit of the conversation before the committee. Right. And this is the spirit that we're trying to go forward with, finding a way that we can, as Lou says, partner, that we can be helpful, because a single property owner just cannot afford the cost of these devices that develop the data that's necessary to find a way to go forward.
And of course developing the data is only the first step.
Oh yeah,
And once you figure it out, then there's going to have to be something done. So like on Mount Auburn a couple of years ago, there was a very significant, I'm not even talking about the Mount Adams retaining wall. I'm talking about the Mount Auburn retaining wall where there had been a significant slippage maybe 2 or 3 years ago. But I think the city led that effort. I don't know if the city paid for it or if there's an assessment to homeowners, or I don't know how that
came. The city assumed that, and I think there were some public parcels involved, and that's one of the issues that we have to figure out. What public infrastructure is going to be is at risk here, and that's one of the reasons that we do have some devices at one parcel where there's some major water mains that we do not want to lose, 60-inch water mains, which would be a tremendous loss.
Okay, this is going to be complex. This is going to go on, and I've just been told we're just about out of time. And I thank you for coming this morning. Let's follow this story, and it's good to see residents and the city working together to solve a problem. So good luck on this. Thank you for making Newsmakers part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week for a special Christmas morning program. Have a good week.